Okay, I'll go ahead and start. So, thank you everybody for joining us today from across the world, wherever you are. And welcome to another podcast of IEEE Power and Energy Society US Canada's student podcast. This is our monthly conversation with our guests who inspire us, speak from their experiences, and are leading the way in power and energy. I'm your host, Priya Mana. I'm a third year PhD student at Georgia Tech, and we have our team behind this podcast with us. We have our producer, Clinton Goddard, editors, Adi Mayer and Paul Nieto, our head graphic designer and social media coordinator, Shani Lin, our publicity lead, Augusto Zanin, and our mentors and executive producers, Hasala Dharmavatena and Conrad Schmidt. As always, this podcast is for you, so we want you to be engaged and interact with our guest. Please ask your questions. Don't wait until the end. Just add it to the chat, and or just ask yourself to be unmuted, and we'll be happy to include you in the conversation. So, without further ado, I want to introduce our guest, and it's my honor to introduce the guest of this evening, Dr. Shay Bahramirad. Welcome, Shay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Priya, and good evening to you and everybody else.
Thank you. Thank you for making the time. I will go ahead and read out your bio, and then we will start from there.
All
so,
right.
Dr. Shay Bahramirad is the Senior Vice President of Engineering and Asset Management at LUMA Energy, the power company responsible for transforming electric service in Puerto Rico. In this role, she is responsible for the oversight, planning, and execution to modernize the power infrastructure. Shay has held several executive positions in the sector, including Vice President of Climate and Resilience at Quanta Technology, where she was responsible for assisting cities and utilities with climate change risk assessment and solutions. Prior to that, Shay was the Vice President of Engineering and Smart Grid at Con-Ed, the utility that is serving Chicago and North Illinois, where she led efforts to demonstrate and deploy technologies at distribution systems that meet strategic goals related to reliability, resiliency, and sustainability. Shay is a leading figure in the industry with many published papers and patents under her name. She has been active with IEEE PES for many years, and she is the IEEE PES President-elect for the coming year. She's also a founder of Women in Power, an editorial board member of Electricity Journal, USC executive member, an adjunct professor at Illinois Institute of Technology, and a contributor to the United Nations SC7, Affordable and Clean Energy. Throughout all these roles and through her leadership in PES, Shay has continuously advocated for developing more inclusive workforce in power and energy, whether it be providing a foundation for developing local engineering talent, teams, and processes at Puerto Rico through LUMA Energy, or through aiding industry-informed STEM education for underrepresented communities in the industry, including girls, while at ComEd. And also to include the work that she's done for Women in Power. So it's my honor to be sitting down with Shay to have this conversation while we are also celebrating Women's History Month and the International Women's Day. So all of that together, this couldn't be any more timely. Welcome, Shay. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much again, Priya. And it's an honor to join you in the day after the Women's Day. So it's International Women's Day.
Yes, I'm glad it worked out. Yes. Awesome. So we would like to talk to you, and just this is an open conversation. We want to hear from you about how you started in this field, what brought you to power and energy. Please share us how you started in here.
I grew up in Iran, and during war in Iran, and there were a lot of nights that we didn't have electricity, and because the city was getting bombarded and all sort of different things, and I used to spend a lot of time looking at the stars, and my dad got me a telescope. So my dream was to become an astronaut, and my dad is a power engineer too, and talking to him, it's kind of, I was like grown into this profession as well. The guidance from him was that the easiest way to become an astronaut is to be an engineer. And that's how I went to an engineering school. And after my undergrad, when I went to Sweden, I got more exposed into renewable energy. And instead of becoming an astronaut, astronomy stayed as a hobby, and I have telescope and go different places in the world and take pictures of stars. But I got fascinated by utilizing and harnessing the energy from sun and the moon and the tidal, and making the grid sustainable and green. That's how I got into this profession.
That is very exciting, and I can imagine how, as you were growing up, this was such a cool thing to happen. I myself come from India, where it was not so much back then a thing, but now it is so much more. So it is exciting that there's so much renewable generation out there.
Yes, it is. Where in India you're from?
I'm from the southern part. I don't know if have you been? Oh, you have been to India? Yes,
I have. Yes, I have been to Delhi and Agra. I had very, very fond memories of India, and I might go back actually in May to Mumbai for somebody I've been mentoring at IEEE. And when he was a student, he was my student at IIT, and I ended up mentoring him even after he graduated from IIT, and we stayed in touch. He accelerated in his professional life, and now he's getting married, so he has invited me to join him.
That is exciting. That's very nice of you there. That is very exciting. That's something actually comes. You bring an important point. How when you were starting off your career and all throughout, can you name a few people how mentoring helped you when you were developing your career? And I see you are giving back now, so I'm sure it was a big part of you as you.
IEEE has given me. I'm an immigrant, and from all the places that I've lived, I had to start creating a network from scratch. It wasn't like I was, born 2 blocks away from here. And IEEE gave me the foundation to get to know people, and I always found people that I respected them and I liked them, and I stayed in touch with them. And many of them, they helped me all my career. I don't know if you know Damir Novosel, but he was the PES president at some point. And the first time I met him, he wasn't even the president. I was a PhD student, and I just was fascinated with him and the presentation that he made at general meeting about synchrophasers. And it was kind of uncomfortable. I walked to him and I told him that I really liked your presentation. Can I talk to you? And he said, yes, of course. And then we started talking, and then I took the time after the conference to send an email to him. Again, I wasn't looking for a job. It was only staying in touch that, hey, I'm the one who stopped by. I wanted to say hello, and please stay in touch. Then, now it's close to 2 decades that I've been working with him, and at some point of time for him at his company, and being mentored by him. There are others that I can name, my PhD professor, Mohammad Shahidapur. Dr. Shahidapur, I've graduated very, very long time ago. We keep joking that I graduated many moons ago, but I still stay in touch with him, and time to time, he helps. When I worked at ComEd, he helped us to get the first grant from the Department of Energy that in the history of ComEd, we never had it. He came to Puerto Rico to help me create relationship with universities in Puerto Rico. So it's a network of people that you create for yourself and surround yourself with. It takes time and energy to keep these and maintain these relationships. But many of these people, maybe they start as your mentors, but eventually they will become your friends and your supporters and sponsors.
So true. You brought such important points there on, like, reaching out even afterwards,
Yeah,
and I know so many of our viewers today are actually students or young professionals. So uh, there's just so much to unpack there, so much to learn from there. But do you have any specific tips that you might want to share for for reaching out to folks, or how to find a
yeah.
mentor?
Every time I always sponsor young engineers from my team to go to IEEE conferences. And every time they want to go, I usually help them to decide and which sessions they should go depending on where they work. But I give them one advice, and it's that try to come back home with 5 new people that you met and you decide to stay in touch with them. When you go out to a conference, don't spend all your time going to lunches and dinners with the friends that you left with, from home. You can do that when you're back home. So it's a that's and at times I do get the fact that it's not very comfortable at times for not for everybody to walk to someone to walk to someone and ask them to get to know them. I remember that when I was going to the first Smart Grid conference, my professor, Dr. Shahidapur, told me that, okay, you're going to a conference. When they ask for a volunteer, raise your hand. I'm like, so what if I don't know it? Well, that's why I'm here to help you to, when you volunteer for something, to deliver. So these kind of things, at times it can be uncomfortable. But those mentors and those professors, if you're a student, they are there to help you.
True, true. And this can't be more timely than this. We have in-person conferences coming back, so
Yes,
it's a time for everybody to just polish on those skills
yes,
and yep, to go out there. And this is again, I just want to remind everybody, this is just like that, an opportunity for you to talk to an industry leader. So as Shay is saying, do chat, do interact. Please do interact with us through the chats. Okay, so now that once you started at your career, how did you find? Was there something that surprised you, or things that you did not know about as you were just starting off your career? Would you like?
so when I started, when you go through an academic path and then you get your PhDs, you get somehow specialized in a topic. And when you start, when I entered into industry, I learned that there's so much that I don't know. And by nature, I'm a very curious person. And there's like, this industry has a lot to offer. And if you get bored after a few years, you can completely switch from one area to the other. I didn't know about all the opportunities that they are out there in this field. And again, my understanding of what I was doing, it was extremely narrow because of I was doing a PhD. And but with the work that you're doing as an engineer in energy sector, you can get into policy, you can get into politics, you can go to law school and practice the part that is very much needed. And there are not so many people who can connect the policy and the technical part. In the technical world, there is like so much going on that you can go from analytics and data science to hardware engineering to power systems to, so again, I can go on and on. And even with vegetation management, believe it or not, there is so much analytics that can be done on vegetation management in the area. So you can, instead of imagine that you live in a place like a tropical place like Puerto Rico, the vegetation is a huge problem because they grow so fast, and you want access to power line to either return the power back on or fix something or build something. It's really hard because of the intensity of vegetation. But there are a lot of analytical ways to measure and calculate with LiDAR and take that information and make it to in meaningful intelligence for people to make decisions. Anyway, I just got off track to say that one thing
Right.
I didn't know when I got into industry is that there is so much that you can get into and experience. You just need to find what triggers your passion.
Definitely, and there can't be a better time than this to be in this industry where it's so much rapidly changing. So definitely.
That is true. Yes.
So you just talked about Puerto Rico, and we would love to hear from you. What excites you at working at LUMA Energy? What kind of projects are you involved with? Something you would like to share?
Yeah. So it's the most interesting, most impactful job that I've ever had. After Hurricane Maria, the infrastructure was wiped, and prior to Maria, it was not very well maintained. When you're talking about data science and data analytics and the basics of power system, I don't really know that anybody on this call has ever worked with maps or with you are used to work with computers and data, and I can tell you that those things don't exist. It's like you're thrown back 25 years in a place that the reliability is very poor. Actually, it's in the fourth quartile compared to the similar utilities. Then there's so much need to build the infrastructure. In addition to that, and modernize it. There are the laws in Puerto Rico that with very ambitious goals to get to 100% renewable. When we talk about the intensity of the intense timeline of connecting renewable, that introduces a lot of challenges to the system. Then, in addition to that, there is the business model of the utility is quite new, and LUMA Energy is a startup utility. So, can you come up with an example of a utility that is a startup after Edison time? So we are starting everything from scratch and bringing all these problems together between renewable integration and between utilizing new technology, revisiting the operation model and making the system reliable. It's like playing chess in multiple boards at the same time. And you want to make sure that you make progress in every aspect because all these goals are equally important. True. It's a very, very, very exciting job. If there's anybody on that, in the audience that would like to be part of this team and feel like you're making an actual impact, shoot me your resume. I would love to get you on board. What we have committed, and then you can see the impact in people's lives. There are communities that they didn't have electricity for years, and we connected them back to the grid. So it's something that you feel the impact that you make in people's lives. So that's what excites me about this job, which comes with a lot of challenges and a lot of problems that needs to be solved.
That's very exciting to hear. But definitely you give me a segue to that. Nothing like that would be without it won't be without its challenges. So definitely trying to bring about a large change. How does that even work? Like how do you need to? I've heard you talk about pacing the change, but how can you do that in a setup like this where yes, you need to make changes, otherwise it just won't work. But it's not easy. It's not a software code, just it's actual physical things. How does that work? How easy or hard that is?
I can promise you one thing, and I was telling my team that I promise you one thing: there will be not a dull moment. So there's not a dull moment. I can promise you that. From the amount of renewable that is it was in the backlog when we took over. From the time that there are 2 other islands that we are envisioning connecting them back to Puerto Rico island by submarine cable, and looking into how the Infrastructure Act, the law that was passed in last year, how the funding is going to help us build a stronger system. So there is like a lot of elements and parts and pieces to it, but one day at a time. Right now, we are doing a lot of engineering work. We are doing a lot of planning work, both at the distribution and transmission level. Another very, very exciting project that we are working on is Department of Energy and Department of HUD and 6 national labs. There was an MOU signed with the governor of Puerto Rico to develop a plan called Puerto Rico 100, a roadmap that would get us to 100% renewable here. So that's just another fascinating project that is going on right now.
Wow, yeah, that's change is coming and it's coming fast.
Yeah, yes.
It's exciting. So I know you have held so many leadership positions where you are trying to bring in different stakeholders, get different things done, and again, our crowd is still young students or students who are early career professionals. But what's your advice for us to get started on these kind of skills that might be eventually can be used the way you're using it right now?
I think I mentioned one of them. One is it is extremely important to create a network. Mm-hmm. To create a network that you can rely on, create a network that you can trust, and create a network that at time that you need a technical, it can be your resource. You can reach out to them with questions, with advice, with opportunities. Mm-hmm. That's like one thing that is extremely important. And as a student, it's the best time to start creating those networks. I'm going to give you another example from the time that I was a PhD student. My professor, Dr. Shahidapur, had this tradition that every year at the general meeting, all his past PhD students with their families, they would show up to a dinner. And many of those, like after years, it's like you're becoming part of a family that they graduated from the lab. And many of them from our professors and the chair of this university, or an executive at Weldon in California, or one of them is in ERCOT. The other one is like there are, so without even making an effort, your network just gets bigger and bigger. So next time you want to write a grant and you need a university partner, you have so many friends from the time that you graduated. So don't take any of them for granted. That was the network. The second thing that I learned it in a very hard way was that the key to success, it's not only the technical skill. The technical skill is the foundation for what you do. That box needs to be checked for every single engineer, no matter you're a bachelor, master's, or a PhD student. But the part that distinguishes you from everybody else is that whatever you do, you're able to communicate that in simple language, in human language. I joke about it to my students that you need to write your midterm in human language, in plain English, without using any equation, any model. Whatever you do, you should be able to communicate that. That communication skills, we as engineers, we are not really great at it. That's something that doesn't come to us. I'm just kind of stereotyping, but I am one, so I can say that. It's something that needs practice, and it's something that requires getting feedback and practicing to make it better. These are the two things, in addition to being a technically savvy, that in my mind are incredibly important. And for both of them, you can take the first steps since you are a student. You don't need to wait to get into professional life.
Those are very useful tips. Do you have any particular things that you had done when you were a student, or when you progressed to make your communication better? Any tools, things that helped you?
Actually, the same thing. Not when I was a student. When I was a student, I was shadowing my professor that he was always had these like guests coming from different places. But I never understood like well, I prefer to run my model. And then I started working, and there was a lab. The company had a lab, and somebody in business development called me, and he said that, hey, can you come down and give a tour to some, like whomever that was? And none of them, they were engineers, but they were decision makers. And I started talking to them, and in like 2 minutes, it was way over their head. And I lost them. You could see that their eyes are like glazing. I didn't achieve anything. I didn't accomplish. It just felt so awful. And I started practicing with the person, and I asked him that, hey, can you help me to get better in this? And then I put together a speech, and I did it. He videotaped me. I hated myself in front of the video. To do the same tour in a non-technical language. I practiced it a number of times, and he became again another mentor. He opened doors for me to go and practice in something that I wasn't really good at it. And then you practice, like you do the tour for 10 times, 11 times, you get better. That's something that, again, it didn't come to me naturally. The first time that I spoke at the T&D conference, like my hands were shaking, and it was just so hard for me to go up on the stage, and my friends back behind they gave me like and I'm not a shy person, but just getting up and talking, it was just uncomfortable. The more you do it, it becomes natural and easier.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing, because usually we just see the polished version that is right now, or for everybody, right? But what goes behind, how many times somebody's like stumbled and then got up, that's great to hear, because I guess we all go through that some ways or other. It's good to get that motivation. Talking more about just stumbling in general, and getting up from there. Would you like to share about technical or otherwise projects, or somewhere where where there were obstacles, and then you, using the skills, networking, communications, or any other skills that you have, you could come over them, things that that like seemed hard in the beginning, but you got through them, and any advice on that?
I was working as a project engineer right off the bat at school, and I was doing the studies related to solar farms and wind farms and market and interconnection studies, all sorts of different studies. And it's like a very typical path for a PhD. That's what you do. You get into those like a complicated studies. And there was this person that I still work with him. His name is Jim McClanahan. He was a director at the time, director of field services. His office was right in front of my cubicle. And he came once and he told me that, hey, do you want to come and work for me? And didn't really know what the job was. And then he said that you can do a lot more than technical studies. You can get into leadership. It didn't mean much at that time for me. And I told him, sure. He sent me the second week of in that role to North Dakota, Williston, North Dakota. It was on a very cold October. The place was in a Motel 6 place that I had to stay, and I had to be part of lead a project that was the first 34 kV interrupters that they didn't have it there. So there were like oil fields that they found, the oil fields, and they didn't have any infrastructure, so they were upgrading the infrastructure. I got out in the field, and the people in the team, they were like 20 years older than me. And being a PhD wasn't really a nice thing. They called me a few times doc. And they were walking in the field and saying that, so do you know which switch is this? Do you know the manufacturer of the cap banks? Like, to me, when you do studies and models and things like that, you really don't get engaged in these kind of things. And it was a very humbling experience for me. What I learned from that, and it was hard. It was few months of very hard being away from home, first of all. Second, in an environment that I was way educated than everybody else, but I was extremely low, like unknowledgeable about everything else. And I didn't even have the way that they were interacting was completely different. What I learned from that experience was how to connect with people with different backgrounds and with different skill set and different level of knowledge. It's a skill that I had to learn it in a very hard way. For weeks, I was feeling that I'm just a failure in somewhere in North Dakota and oceans away from home in Iran and not doing exactly what on earth I'm doing. So I said all of that to say that I learned the skill to connect to people, different people. And it's extremely important if you want to run a business, because you have to deal with regulators, you have to deal with legislators, that they not necessarily they have the same level of education as you have. You have to run craft, like technicians that they are in the field and they build things with their hands. And then you have to run a group of PhDs. So there's like a extremely different, like diverse group of people. And in my mind, the way to be successful is to learn how to connect with them.
That is very, very humbling experience. And yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Hasala has asked a question in chat. I want to read that out. Why are there not many EEs in leadership positions in the utility industry? What is your advice to young professionals who would like to go up the leadership ladder?
Hasala, I don't think that's really the case, because the leadership, I don't know what you mean by leadership, in as a CEOs or as a in vice presidents or senior vice presidents. CEO.
CEO.
All right.
The management part, I think.
Yeah. So there is, it's funny, I was speaking to somebody else about this topic, that I've been studying the CEOs in the US mainly, and majority of them, they're either lawyers or there are engineers. Actually, my boss is an engineer. He's an electrical engineer. I would say, or there are CFOs, or they come through the path of politics. So there are different types of like utilities that I would say. The ones that they are invested on utilities, they're different than the ones that they are municipalities. So you can say that they are political appointees versus they being selected as a CEO. The issue that I can share with you is that for what I have observed is that in order to be a successful CEO, there are very many different skill sets that someone needs to have. And we tend not to have the greatest communication skills and a wide range of experiences to be able to take those jobs. Can we do it? Oh, absolutely, yes. But there are not so many engineers out there, so that makes the financial part plays a huge role part of it. Stakeholder management, dealing with policymakers and lawmakers and customers, consumer groups, and advocates of clean energy advocates, or depending on where you are, sometimes like coal advocates, all sorts of different things. It just comes into the skill set. It's not about really knowing the technical skill. You don't really need to know how to run power flow in order to become a CEO. So if that's the thing that you'd like to get, path that you would like to eventually to get at, I would say that broadening, you need to be an expert in one area, whatever that is. And then after that, broadening your expertise from volunteering and learning, from getting an MBA or getting a law degree, or the jobs that you take. The first few years, it has to be a technical role. Otherwise, you become a generalist. I always have I see that the people have like expertise in one area to be more successful. Then after that, change jobs. You can, with an engineering degree, as I said in the beginning, you have so many options ahead of you. If you want to go through that high level management, that means that you should be open to take the risks and to take the challenge on learning new skills that not necessarily a typical engineering skill. I hope I answered your question, Hasala, and I look forward to seeing you one day as a utility CEO.
Okay, so let's up for it, looks like. Awesome. And then yes, you talked about the experience that you had going out in the field, and then how you learned from that. And again, you cannot prepare for everything that comes your way in general. I I get it, but still, how did you prepare for to get better or get more comfortable with such situations?
Hey, if I know 100% of a job, I will never take it because it gets really boring.
Mm.
The whole fun part of a job or a challenge is to figure things out.
Mm.
Then it goes back to many different things that we talked about. Having a basic, having a deep, like a technical skill in an area. Then being resourceful and reaching out to people and being humble about the fact that there are so many things you don't know. And the last thing that I would say is that it's even hard for me to say it, is that it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay to take 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. At the end of the day, you have made progress. I had a mentor who at ComEd, he was the chief legal officer. He was a chief lawyer of the company, and at that time I was working at a microgrid, how to get approval to build the first cluster microgrid with IIT. And that I said that how they Dr. Sridhar and Demir, they helped us to write a grant and get the money. But then we needed to get approval from regulatory, and every time we started with the path of legislation, and every time we were meeting with the legislator in Springfield, it was just hard to get through them. And how in like 10 minutes you want to talk about the concept of microgrid, which is so complex, and communicating what are the benefits of it, how the technology works, it's just impossible. And I was walking out just feeling so down that, it just every time they took us like a meeting after meeting after meeting, and we are not getting anywhere. And that's what I learned from him, that technology leads, but at the end of the day, policy rules. As long as you're taking 2 steps forward, 1 step backward, as long as you're making progress, you should be happy with that.
Right. It's this resilience of not just the infrastructure but ourselves as well, like making sure
it's a very good word, that resilience that we keep talking about it in infrastructure. A good characteristic of a leader, a good leader, in my mind, is resilience. Being okay with the fact that you failed, but then you just get up and then keep going.
Interesting. This makes me curious. How do you make sure that you stay physically and mentally fit and resilient? Something that you personally enjoy, like to do. What's your mantra there?
I used to play ice hockey.
Oh.
And I used to go skiing. I haven't gone skiing since 2019 and COVID. But I swim and do CrossFit, and I grew up doing a lot of intense intense sports. Both are playing tennis. These days, I live in a hot place, so I've gotten into paddle boarding. And
Exciting.
this is, and then at the same time, I meditate. I got into meditation a couple of years ago. And for my mental health, I read quite a lot. That just helps me stay centered. In addition to that, life throws a lot of things at you, and it's important to have confidence when the days get hard, so you can trust them and pick up the phone and talk to them. The two people that I told you, they were the most influential in my career. Every time that, every day or every event that it was, I felt like if something didn't work out or I wasn't quite successful, they were the two people that I called and had a conversation. The encouragement that I got from them, from the mirror, from Dr. Shahidapur, and the advice at times, and it just helped me to stay course.
That's so important. Any leader needs that
Yes.
support system.
Actually, everybody needs that.
Everybody needs that, totally. And actually, that's a message for everybody. Like, take
Yes.
care of your physical health, mental health, have your support system. Yeah.
Yes. Especially, it's harder when during COVID, if for the people that they are isolated and working remotely, and it's hard. I didn't meet the people that I mentioned to you in internet. It was you meet them in person, so it's hard. So it's important to take the time for mental and physical health.
Definitely. COVID is something we cannot not talk about. How was it, like being a leader during COVID and during a global pandemic? Did you end up making personal or leadership decisions that you never thought you would?
So as an industry, we went digital. The digital transformation happened over 48 hours. I'm talking about my past life at Comet. We decided that on a Thursday we have to go remote, and on Monday everybody was remote. So you can imagine, if it was a normal day, utility sector is very conservative. And in order to make a decision to do digital transformation, I bet you that it would take like years and years and years to assess the cost and the impact and the risks and all sorts of different things. And all at once we turned into a remote digital organization. The reason that initially, so we had to go through a lot of these challenges. But the reason that we were successful was that many of these relationships were built. If you think about it, it's hard to create those relationships when everybody is remote. It takes a lot more effort to create that connection when it's virtual versus when you're in person. I had to take a lot of extra time to connect with people that I used to walk in the office, this is the 5th floor, the 6th floor, these are my floors, and talking to the people in my team. But then when you end up being remote, that means that it takes, again, a lot more effort and even a lot more emotional toll to make sure that you genuinely connect with people in the team, making sure that the relationships are maintained. If there are any issues and challenges, you get to the bottom of it. So that was I would say, the challenging part. But the good part of it was that we learned how to do things virtually a lot better than how we used to do 2-3 years ago. And that makes the world smaller. So we can, I don't know where you are right now, but that means that during the election, I spoke at 406 different unique places. And how could I do that if it wasn't all virtual? That brings everybody together, and it makes the world feel smaller. So that's the bright side of it.
Right. I myself have attended one of those town halls during the election time. So I am in Atlanta, and I might not have traveled for that. So I'm glad that that happened. That's
All
wonderful.
right, I see that number of questions here. Should
Yes.
we answer them?
Sure. I can read out if you'd like. So, Maha asks, how do you assess the pros and cons of each environment based on your experience? Like, what were the main drivers for you to switch from being mainly in industry to coming back to academia after being in industry for a while? So, back and forth.
That's a very interesting question. So first of all, there's not a perfect place to work at. Nothing in life is perfect. Let's just get over with it and be on the same page that there is nothing perfect in this world. Every environment, every job has its pros and cons. Depending on where you are in your life and the lifestyle that you have, for the women out there that they want to have a family life and they want to slow down for a few years and then go back to industry, it's a bit different. For if you want to move to another country, that means that you have to take a bit of a step back until you get familiar with what's going on in the new environment and the way that they practice engineering. So it really depends on individual circumstances. But the way that I personally assess the pros and cons is that I have few things that they are extremely important to me. I need to feel like I'm making an impact day in, day out. At the end of the year, I would like to look back and say that I did make an impact. That's the most important thing. The second thing is it's very important to me to work with people that I respect and I trust. The technical part of it, we can always work it out, and with training and learning and go through the education together. These are the important things for me. So part of it, I would say that to answer your question, is kind of personal. You have to think about what's important to you and how you would like to, how flexible you are with the things that are important to you. With being from industry to academia, I can tell you that I stayed very close to academia. I still teach. I teach Saturday mornings. And the reason is that why do I do that? I still don't know. At some point of time, maybe I want to go back and become a full-time professor. That's like one thing. The second thing that I find it extremely exciting to work with young students, that they're going to be young professionals and learn from them. The questions that they throw at you, at times I have to go back and really think about it, do research, and they keep you on your toes, and it's a very good thing. And third, it's my recruiting mechanism. I usually end up hiring my students anywhere that I work. So you see, it's in this point in my life and in my career, majority of my time is in industry, but I do have a little bit of a foot in academia because I just like it so very much. I really enjoy teaching. So you have to think about what makes you excited, and if it's academia or if it's industry. And the good part of it is you can do both the way that I do it.
That is great. And so Alexis has a similar question about what drives you in some ways. How do you ensure that the organization and activities are aligned with your core values?
So where I am in my career right now, that my responsibility is to develop the vision of the organization. And part of my job is to communicate that in my team and make sure that everybody understands it. Everybody understand why this is the vision of the organization and where we are heading together, as a team. And making sure that everybody is on board. And that is not as easy as you think. When you have a team of 400 people, 500 people, it is important to take the time and come up with a vision that resonates with everybody. In this case, I can tell you that we are building a grid in Puerto Rico that is going to be safe, reliable, and resilient, and enable renewable energy. This is the vision of engineering and asset management in Puerto Rico.
That's there's a follow-up question to that too. Actually, Clinton is asking, what are some of your major milestones for your progress at Puerto Rico? What would complete success look like decades from now?
So right now, I told you that we are 4th quartile reliability, and the basis of where we started is basically where, June 1st of 2021. In Q3 of when we started, our fiscal year is different than a bit of a calendar year. We started in June 1st, so we just closed out our Q3. Our Q3, our SAIDI numbers are 35% better than Q2. Still, we are 4th quartile, and we are way behind the 1st quartile utilities in the country and in the world, and IEEE does a benchmark too. So a decade from now, I would say that the reliability with the progress that we are making is going to be way better than where we are right now. The safety of Puerto Rico grid is 10 point something. We are going to have significant amount of renewable energy in the system. A decade from now, I have to look at the penetration of the law, and in 10 years from now, what percentage we are going to have. But we are going to have significant amount of renewable energy in the system. And I'm going to have a world-class engineering organization that drives innovation with social responsibility and connects with communities and expose kids from different backgrounds to STEM and try to engage them and get them into STEM and engineering in the future.
That's very exciting. Thank you for what you're doing in Puerto Rico, and that's exciting just to hear about it. These are great questions, by the way. Please keep them coming. We have some more time here, so yes. Okay, so I also want to ask, since you brought that up, what makes you excited about your volunteering in with IEEE PES? What is in store, and what are some of the things that you're excited about?
So I told you that I was an immigrant, and IEEE gave me a place to meet people and make friends, and I found my jobs, and I hired people, and I created a professional network that now if I want to have a question about the relay, I know I have to go through, find a friend from PSRC, or if you want to talk about microgrid, this is where you go. And it created a community for me to professionally and personally to grow. So I feel that it's my responsibility to give back. The younger generation, what excites me about working with young generation is that they are mission or driven. The Hasala and a lot of his friends, I can go name a lot of people that they have inspired me by how driven they are and how they want to change the world. But it's not only about engineering. They see the world as a community, and they want to make the world a better place. When we talk about climate change, it's a topic that I'm very passionate about, and seeing that the younger crowd in IEEE PES, how much they want to be part of this effort, and making sure that there are solutions, and both for mitigation and adaptation to climate change. So it's again, I kind of went on and on to tell you that IEEE is a great place to make impact in societies around the globe. If you want to get expose more kids to STEM. Hey, women in engineering and IEEE, they have programs for you to do that. If you want to help entrepreneurs from parts of the world that they are not as advantageous as many other places, IEEE Smart Village does that. If you want to develop technologies that they standards that they would, or guides that they would help mitigating climate change, IEEE is one place to do that. So it's a ecosystem of opportunities to solve societal problems. That's how I see IEEE.
Okay. So we have a question from Larissa Afolabi, sorry, is wanting to find a mentor for your building my career, is wanting to find a mentor for building my career is like putting horse before the cart when you're still a student.
Larissa, first of all, wonderful to see you here. That you have the best mentor that I've had in my career, right on the 16th floor of IIT. But I don't really believe so. It's your mentor can be a technical mentor, it can be a business mentor, and the mentor that you have 2 years from the time that you're a student is a different mentor that potentially when you're an executive. It's basically someone that you can connect to and you can speak to and you can learn from. I really don't see it as putting the horse before the cart when you're a student. Many of these times, the mentors becoming your champions. They open doors for you. They get you into the next volunteering opportunity, the next leadership. When a job opens, they remember you, so they connect you to their network. It's a lot more into only than mentorship.
We have one more question from Sri Krishnan. I know you shared a lot of general skills, like leadership skills, but do you want to, if there are few key leadership skills that specifically for today's dynamic world?
I would say there are, the first thing I would say about in this dynamic world is being inclusive. The inclusion it's not only gender, it's not background, it's the technical knowledge. That inclusion and equity makes us all better. It doesn't matter what you do, where you are, and what engineering problem you solve. That's in my mind, it's a very important aspect of leadership. The second part is adaptable. Understanding that the environment changes and the priorities change, and how you adapt to the new environment and new priorities. And the third one is being bold. It's okay to have very bold goals. We need bold leaders to solve big problems that we have, like climate change. We need to put a stick on the ground and try as hard as we can and to solve some of these issues that it's been created for generations, and now we have no choice but resolving them. I just said climate change in my mind, and it's the biggest challenge of our time that we need to solve.
Wonderful. We are almost at the top of the hour, so I think we can wrap it there. So thank you so much again for leaders like you taking the time out and mentoring students. It means a lot, and we really appreciate all the time.
Thank you so much for doing that. I'm not very comfortable talking about myself, and it gets like a bit uncomfortable and when you ask these questions, but I have learned a lot from the people that they were open and shared their experiences with me. I hope that it was the same. I would love to stay in touch. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to connect, you can find my email address in IEEE PES board, and I'm very much looking forward to working with you and partnering with you in the next 2 years as president-elect and the 2 years after as the president of PES. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is an exciting time. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And thank you once again, Shay. We appreciate this a lot. Bye. Good night.